And here's another funny story about these chairs, how I got them. I got them for free. And how I got them was I went to a family wedding, and me and my brother saw these chairs, thought they'd be good for the studio. So we went and we got orange vests, and we put them on, and we walked into this hotel lobby, and we took the chairs out and put them in the car. We stole them.
Well, if you're going into a fucking lobby, why don't you steal chairs that are actually exciting and unique and special?
I thought these were.
Jesus Christ, man.
I'm a thief.
That's awful.
So you were wondering.
Do your parents know that?
Yeah, they do. They weren't happy, but they were there, actually. They were technically accomplices.
You're like a Jewish biker.
We used their car. We used their car to put these chairs in it.
Oh, my God, that's awful.
Yeah, so I don't come from a good family, you could say.
I'm pretty sure that you have a way harder time getting through life than the average person, Ari. I don't know why anybody would listen to this. I know I won't.
Ari, your advice single-handedly broke up my marriage. You're an awful person.
You're 24 years old. Why would I listen to you? Why would you be giving therapy and advice to people who clearly need it? It doesn't make any sense, Ari. This is a horrible idea.
You're listening to
Unlicensed
Therapy with Ari Manis.
How are you?
I'm still trying to live the dream.
Did I take you away from work today? I take a couple hours of your work day?
What I like to do is, if I'm going to do my own podcast, the Industry Standard, in my spare time, I'll do that at a lunchtime if I can, as you know, because you used to be a tremendous producer on that show.
Yeah.
So I try to do them as much as I can at lunchtimes, and then when somebody asks me to do it, I try to do it at a time that works. Like I just did Todd Garner's podcast.
Oh, I listen to that one sometimes.
His first guest was Adam Sandler, so I told him I was doing a show. I said, Jesus, I feel like I should be wearing clown shoes. But, you know, I think one of the amazing things about this business is it never ceases to shock you, no matter what level you're at. I don't care if you're Steven Spielberg or if you're Joe Spielberg.
Is Joe Spielberg a real person?
I will look him up on IMDb. But I get in there and I sit down and I say, I'm just really grateful that you had me do the podcast. And he said, Barry, you're the reason why I'm doing the podcast. You know, I've been listening to your show and you had me as a guest and I wanted to bring something to the table. And so when you hear that, it almost validates everything that you do because you just want to do great things for people. I don't know if everybody listening to the show or watching your show feels that way, but to me, I'm not doing the podcast because I want to become a famous star. I'm doing the podcast because as a manager, like when you help an artist with your talent and their talent, let's say be a cast member on Saturday Night Live, it's fucking great, but you only helped one person. It could be argued, no, Barry, you helped NBC and Lorne and his team and the writing staff and the producers
and all the people who watch the show
and all the people who watch the show enjoy that talent. But I'm talking in the scheme of being a manager. When you're a manager, your goal is to service the bucket list of people and what they want in their careers. And so you do the podcast, you do one episode of the podcast, and hundreds of thousands and eventually millions of people get something out of it. And you get letters that are insane. You're getting letters like I'm getting letters like Dane Cook is getting letters from the military.
You're getting letters or emails? You've gotten handwritten letters?
Handwritten letters. Wow. I've gotten steamer trunks, FedExes, because I have things that I talk about. FedEx. I get,
like
direct
FedExing
messages.
the
I
package
get,
trip.
Instagrams. I get every kind of communication, and it's incredibly positive. But when you're doing a podcast, you think, okay, well, that's who I'm reaching, the people who are starting their journey or have gotten their shit kicked out of them, and they're want to let you know that they helped, and they tell you their story of how they used your advice to do something, and this is what happened. But then every once in a while you'll get something like, I think when you were producing the podcast, it was probably one of the proudest moments for me, and it seems silly, but I got a handwritten letter from George Shapiro, who produced Seinfeld for all those years and was Jerry Seinfeld's manager still to this day. It's like, he's in his 80s, great podcast, and he sends me this handwritten letter. Thank you so much. I thought you might enjoy this. And in the letter was another letter, and it was sort of opened, and it was addressed to George Shapiro and his address. And I open it up, and it says, George, I just want you to know I listened to you on Industry Standard, and I love the interview. It's one of the best interviews I've ever heard, and I could have listened to it 10 more times. Thank you so much for doing it, Judd. And I'm like, holy shit, Judd Apatow is listening to the podcast? When the fuck does he have time to
And then you
listen
had
to
him on
me?
the podcast, right?
Yeah, so then I called him and asked him, and he did it. And so it's an incredible thing to do something, especially at my age, especially when people have told you, don't do it. Everybody told me not to do it. Like, you can't do it, Barry. There's no managers who do this. It's a bad move. You know where all the bodies are buried. You know all the stories. People are going to hate it. Executives are going to be pissed off. They're not going to book your talent. They're not going to talk to you. Clients are going to fire you. I said, hey, listen, I'm not worried about that. I've gotten fired plenty of times. I'll get fired more times, and I'll get hired more times. And I did it anyway. And I'm really glad I did, because it's probably the greatest thing, personally rewarding thing that I've ever done. And you're Jewish, and if you were to talk to a rabbi, you would say, I feel really good about what I'm doing now. And the rabbi would say, well, it's not all you. You can't feel this way unless there's an equal part on the other side that's getting something back in an equal form. So even though I feel so much, I'll use a Yiddish word because I stayed in your home, nachas.
My parents are.
Nachas means just great feelings. It's the first time I've ever done that in any interview or any podcast. And there's got to be at least an equal amount of people getting the same much back from it. Yeah. And I feel these journeys of these people, and I just want to tell your audience that you were an incredibly wonderful part of my journey, and you dedicated so much to me, and you gave so much effort to it, because as you know, I'm not an easy person to deal with. It's not that I'm an angry person. It's not that I'm a type AAA person. It's not that I'm throwing staplers at you.
Maybe you're a little eccentric.
Yeah, I'm eccentric, and I like to have things edited a certain way that I want them.
And for those listening, what that means is Barry had me edit out every breath, every little imperfection of a podcast. Barry, do you still do that? Do you still edit those out?
Yeah, I like.
He makes his podcast perfect, whereas most people hit record and release it. Maybe they'll cut something out if they offend someone or say something offensive or talk shit about someone. Barry will say, "No, leave all that in, but take out the little imperfections." But
yeah, if an artist asks to take something out,
yeah, of course,
I'll take it out. Or sometimes, like, I think we did this together. somebody said something and didn't catch themselves saying it, and they said something really offensive about overweight women.
Right. Yeah.
And I took it out, and then I told them I took it out because I didn't want them
Right.
to get
Yeah.
get
You
hurt
got
by it.
people. You don't want anyone to get in trouble, including your guest or yourself or.
But
anyone.
you were incredible with me.
It was a
and-
good learning experience too. I got to listen. It forced me to listen to the podcast, which I should listen to every episode, but I can't say that I find the time to listen to every single one. But it forces me to, and every single episode you learn something new about that person, about the industry, about life, and it was a good podcast. It was a good education. It was like a little college course on the entertainment business.
But one of the things that I thought about with you there, which, I mean, I thought to myself when I was starting in the business, and the people that you got to meet,
Yeah.
and the people that you were in front of face to face.
Yeah, it was nerve-wracking, even though,
It was incredible. I never had that. Like, I didn't have, 1% of that. And so sometimes when somebody's doing, even when somebody's doing, an internship, I think to myself, when that happens and they're in the room, I had this interview with Norman Lear. I mean, I had to pinch myself to Norman Lear. I mean, this is a guy who changed my life, even though he didn't know he changed my life. And I think I had 3 interns in there during the time. And after they shook his hand and walked them down to the car and he talked to them for a while, I came back to the office and I actually said this thing to myself, which is horrible. But I said this in my mind. I said, I don't have to do another fucking thing for these interns. I mean, if I just had 1 hour or 2 hours with Norman Lear when I was coming up, I mean, I would have found $5,000 to pay for that. And so I feel like the internships that I do work with, as well as the assistant, I feel like I really want to be a mentor. I really want to try to do great things. I'm here today. I don't do every podcast.
Right. I'm sure you get asked a lot.
And I'm here because I genuinely love you. Your family has been amazing to my family. And you fucking spit blood for me. And you are not a spit blood for anyone kind of guy.
No. I mean, it's funny because looking back, I was in front of and got to meet all these crazy power player guests on the Industry Standard podcast. But I was so new to LA at that time. I had just moved here, just started stand up. I really just didn't even realize it at the time. I mean, I did, but I didn't at the same. You know what I mean? I didn't know who anyone was. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess this is a producer. Oh, I guess this is a director. But I wasn't in that world. I didn't know. So I was just, all right, I'm producing another podcast.
I mean, you should tell your audience some of the names that you were privy to
it
and
was
sitting
everyone.
next to a meeting and talking.
I got, Neil Brennan, directors, producers, just go through his catalog of guests because I was on for the first 100 episodes or so. It was a long time. And then later after that, I was helping Pauly record his podcast, Pauly Shore, who I got open for and stuff like that. And we went to Judd Apatow's house to record it. So I was sitting in Judd Apatow's living room just looking at his family pictures and stuff. It was pretty weird. It's a weird moment. I don't know why. I mean, he's just a guy like anyone else. He's just a guy with a family. But you think, wow, this guy has made all the movies that I love and that I dream of making and being in.
And working with Pauly, obviously that's another thing that was a great thing for you. And you got to see how 2 different people work.
Yeah.
And how 2 different people function in business and how they talk to people and how they relate and their relationships and where they go wrong and where they go right and the ups and downs just in a different profession. And Pauly's a fascinating fascinating guy. It was a great interview I had with him, and I've known him since he first started. And, when you're talking about a guy who, grew up sitting on a stairs with Richard Pryor.
Right. When Sam Kinison is his babysitter.
Yeah, when you're what do you expect somebody's going to come out like? But the fact is anytime
someone says Paulie's a weird guy, I go, he's actually very normal considering his childhood and how he was raised.
And the fact is that, in my opinion, he had as high a highs as Richard Pryor or Sam Kinison had. He had as low a lows as Sam Kinison had and Richard Pryor. The difference was he didn't create a body of work that the audience embraced for long periods of time, decades, and that's the difference. And for any comedian or any artist listening, the biggest thing that you should always be working on is what it is you put out there in the world, because that's the thing that you're judged on through time. And if it's original and extraordinary, and as I like to say, undeniable, then it's going to be Pryor-esque or Kinison-esque. And even if Paulie were sitting here, he would say, my material does not stack up to Sam or to Richard.
Right. But they would probably say their material didn't stack up to someone else, I would imagine.
A lot of times they might, but the point being is that if you just take the comedy profession, and what I'm about to say is probably kind of, I don't want it to seem daunting or depressing, but in every profession, there's a lot of geniuses. In the tech world, there's a lot of geniuses. In the music world, we can name 25 geniuses. Just in front of the mic, and then behind the mic, you can name other geniuses. In in the law profession or whatever, people, in that profession, they can name tons of geniuses from all over the world. In the writing world, we can name tons of geniuses, not tons, but a lot of them, who are just prolific, and they keep churning great stuff out, movies and TV. TV has never been more powerful and great than it is now. Normally, when there's more content out there, normally the law of supply and demand, you'll have, stuff will be shittier. It's not. It's
better
great.
than it's ever been.
But in comedy, I'm going to ask you this question, Ari. I'm going to put you on the spot, okay?
Okay.
I'm really going to put you on the spot.
Can't wait.
Okay. Name all of the comedy geniuses that are alive right now.
I mean, I'm sure I'm going to miss a bunch, but geniuses to me, my favorite comedians, comedic minds.
Not your favorite geniuses.
But they're my favorite because I think they're geniuses.
Okay. How many are geniuses who are working today?
Louis C.K., Bill Burr, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Theo Von.
Okay, time out. And I love Theo Von. But if Theo Von's sitting right here, he's not putting himself in that.
Well, he's a humble guy. But I'd put him up there with those guys personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Andrew Santino.
Okay.
Michael Costa.
Okay.
Fahim Anwar.
Okay.
Those are just the ones off the top of my head.
All right. So first of all, Michael Costa, Fahim.
They're earlier on
and
compared
Theo,
to the first guys I named.
And Theo, I love all those guys because They're all trying to do something. Let me rephrase. I don't want to say they're trying. They're all doing something uniquely authentic. I'd say number one on the list of those three, and I hope I don't offend any of these three because
They won't listen.
I love them
You're
all.
all good.
Fahim is doing something a cut above those other two because what he's trying to do is something almost Andy Kaufman-esque, where he's trying to create two personas that work seamlessly well on any given night. And I know there's other comedians out there who've done, look, there's a guy who created a
people have
television
characters.
show who's, the sportscaster. There's Jeff Cesario who does. But Fahim is just taking it like one step further, and the edge on the comedy is really cutting edge. Whereas those other people, it's not as cutting edge. Theo Von, the reason why I don't put Theo Von in that category, in the Chappelle category of all that, is because there's something about the Southern accent that is lighter fuel to the fire of comedy.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So when you do the comedy with a regular voice, it's not as funny as if you do the comedy like this with this kind of voice, and you sit on the stool like Bill Cosby, and you kind of focus yourself in one place, and then you tell the long story about school and what's it's like dousing the comedy with flames, and it just explodes.
I agree with that, but he can't control where he grew up.
That's
true.
true.
That's just his voice.
That's true. Neither can Anthony Clark, but you talk to Anthony Clark in person, and you talk to him on you see him on stage. He accentuates
it up a bit.
And my feeling is that Theo Von accentuates the accent on stage. I could be wrong. I'd love for him to tell me that I'm wrong. I've talked to him. He actually won Last Comic Standing, the internet version of it.
I didn't know there was an internet version.
It was only 1 year, but I feel like that accentuates it, and then the technique of sitting on the stool, it's a formula that's, as comedy audiences we've seen before. Mm-hmm. The material we have not seen before. Great, original, wonderful, great stories. Because in comedy, it's all about the story. And we'll talk about that in a little bit.
I mean, I think this is one of those things where comedy is so subjective. I mean, some of the names, even, Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr. We love those guys. I love those guys. But there's people that go, I'm not a big fan of Dave Chappelle. That exists.
But that's okay.
Yeah, and that's okay.
I want to address that as well. Yeah. But I want to finish this point.
Okay.
Please don't let me forget these points. So when I look at geniuses, I want to I guess my mind goes to certain places where I think, okay, I saw that blueprint before. I saw the sitting on the stool before. Right. I saw the Southern accent before. I didn't see the material before. Great material. Fahim, I've seen the guy do the character before and then do the other character. Okay, tonight I'm this guy and tonight I'm that guy. But the material, fucking unbelievable.
Right.
Michael Costa, a guy who's kind of like that, the persona being the guy who doesn't understand how arrogant and cocky and how, he does that kind of character that doesn't understand. The character that pulls out a trophy out of his jacket and even the pieces that he's doing on The Daily Show. Great material and wonderful point of view. But I tend to I guess sometimes in my mind, and I'm just one guy. Who gives a fuck what I say? You're just asking.
Sure, yeah. Everyone.
And so I'm just saying, love Michael Costa. Love that character. but I feel like I've seen this blueprint before. And when I think about Chappelle, who I managed for 8 years.
That's what I was going to say. For those of you, I never got to give Barry a proper intro.
You don't do that later?
Because Barry takes over the podcast when he comes on as a guest.
I'm so sorry. I'll shut up.
No. You're good. I love it. I expected it. I wanted it. I love it. But Barry Katz, for those of you who don't know, has managed basically almost all of my favorite comedians at some point in his career, which is Bill Burr, Louis C.K.,
Dave Chappelle,
Nick Swardson. Did you you manage Nick Swardson? Just a lot of my absolute favorites. So he's kind of probably. I bet you most people listen to this won't know who you are because they don't listen to yours. Maybe some of them will come over who know you, but most people won't. So he's kind of a comedy legend. He's like the most famous comedy manager because most people don't know who comedy managers are because they're behind the scenes. But Barry Katz, if anyone could name a comedy manager, it would probably be Barry Katz. I would argue. I mean, there's other powerful managers that other comedians may know, but as far as I don't know, that's what I think. I could be wrong. What would you agree with that statement? Would you say you're the most famous comedy manager? You don't want to say it. It's making you uncomfortable.
I think there's tremendous comedy managers that are fucking amazing that just, hide in the shadows, and because their job is what they learned and were trained to be their job, which is selflessness at the benefit of the people that they're working with. And I believe that the relationships that I create, look,
I mean, part of it is also because Barry's a fucking weirdo and people make fun of him.
I am the most imitated voice in comedy, I think, right?
You're up there. Everyone has a Barry Katz impression. Everyone has a Mitzi Shore impression. Everyone has a Jamie Masada impression.
Well, I'd love to hear your Barry Katz.
I can't do it. I'm not an impressionist. I don't even try.
I can't even do me. So getting back to the genius thing. So I'm going to pretend that Michael Costas and Fahim and Theo are here, and I'm going to pretend that what I believe they would say, that they aren't in the category of the people you mentioned.
Okay,
so you mentioned 4 people: Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Louis C.K., Bill Burr. And I'm going to agree with you there on those 4 people.
And those are the one that I think most people would agree with.
Yeah. I'm going to add one more to the list that I think is in that category of so much incredible originality and uniqueness that no one could ever even take a bit from. It's just so... And I would add Jim Jeffries to that list.
He's great.
I mean, if
I would add other people to the list too. Those are just like top of my head. But yeah, I would agree. Jim Jeffries. If you were to
Google the gun control bit on YouTube and you watch that, it's like game, set, match. There's no one that's ever done anything like that I know of in comedy. And if maybe Lenny Bruce at some point in time did something along that lines, but I mean, forget about it. So to me, again, we talked about the story. It's all about the story, the content, and I talked earlier about how anybody out there as an artist, where you're going to get where you're going to go is by creating extraordinary words on the page. They're either on the page for a book, they're on the page for a film, they're on the page for a television show, they're on the page for the Comedy Central roast jokes, they're on the page for your own stand-up. Whatever it is, your podcast, you're doing the opening monologue, your YouTube channel, if you're putting out content that is equal to moving people, like the 5 people that I just mentioned, well, get a fucking helmet, because people will find you and you are going to be as successful as you ever thought you could ever be in your life, much more. And you talk about the levels of success, and you talked about Chappelle and how, you know, believe it or not, there are people out there that say, you know, I'm not a fan of Chappelle.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to just give an example of something to you, okay? So your audience can't see this, but I'm just going to do this here. There's a little white speck there's a lot of white specks on this table.
It's an old shitty table.
See, but there's a little white speck on that table there. It's like this, the size of, like, if you were to take a safety pin and prick it and then fill it with white. Now, Ari, that speck there, what percentage of this entire room, ceiling, walls, all the four walls and the ceiling and the floor, so
0.00001.
Say it again.
0.00001%.
0.00001%. So what he's saying is, I don't know exactly because I didn't hear all the zeros, but what he's saying is that's probably 1 out of a million, right there. Maybe he's saying 1 out of 100,000. Let's say he's saying 1 out of 100,000. But I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to say 1 out of a million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you're an artist out there and doing anything or anything you're doing where, let's say you're somebody who loves internet slogans and you love hats and you want to start a company where you sew internet slogans on the bill of hats, and that's something that moves you and you want to start that career. Okay? But am I going to make it? Am I going to reach the world? Am I going to reach the people out there? I mean, how am I ever going to fucking make it? Well, if you reach that one fucking dot, you're a multi-millionaire. And if you're a comedian and if you reach that, if that amount of people buy your special or buy your album, you are fucking living in a mansion in Beverly Hills. If that amount of people come see you in your shows across the country, you're going to be fucking models on piles of cash. But people always think, I got to reach everybody. I got to be, everybody's got to know my name. I got to be a superstar. No, you don't. You just have to reach that amount of people who love you and believe in you and think you're fucking great, and you're going to be successful. And then that builds and it snowballs, and then it's a bigger dot and a bigger dot, and then it's the size of this table, which still isn't anything. People say, like, God, Cardi B, she has 37 million followers. Well, how many people are in the world, Ari?
7 billion, I think?
7 billion. Now, I don't have a calculator here. I don't know what percentage 37 million is of 7 billion because my phone calculator doesn't go up that high. But I'm pretty sure it's a small percentage of the world. And she's the biggest female hip-hop artist in the world.
And I've heard of her, but I've never even heard her music. Which
and
goes
people
to show
sometimes make fun because there's certain areas of our world that don't make sense. Like, for instance, there are probably 7 household name magicians in the past 100 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, not right now.
Like 7 maybe. And guess what hasn't happened in the last 100 years? There's not one female household name magician that anyone could name.
Interesting.
And if I ask people to name household
do it.
name magicians, they'd name David Copperfield, who I've had in the show, Lance Burton, who I've had in the show, maybe Chris Angel.
David
Blaine. But that's a profession, believe it or not, in every state, in every place in the world. There's tons of magicians. And there are fucking great magicians now.
Magic Castle right back here.
Yes, the Magic Castle. If you haven't been, it's incredible. Why are there no why are there only 7? Why are there only no women? And in hip hop, how many women household name artists are there? It's shocking.
Few.
Because it's weird because the women and men rally around the words that are very degrading to women. But young kids, whatever, even young girls, they're singing the songs that include words about their own anatomy and what guys are doing to them. And yet they don't support the female artists who are part of the group. In comedy, I remember one time I got to spend a lot of time with Chris Rock. And one of the things he said was really interesting. He said, Barry, I never understand why there's not more millionaires who are women in comedy. I mean, all I got to do is put that great hour together and that people love, and they're going to be a millionaire. They're women. And he didn't say this, but what I could tell where he was going is that if you look at the rankings of all the comedians in the world and you had every comedian polled, men and women, like a guy could be like the 150th best stand-up comedian, and there might be the 3rd woman in there or the 7th woman in there. And so when you think about women in comedy or millionaires, there's probably 10 of them. Maybe that's a bad exaggeration.
And it seems like there's more now. They're trying to make more of them now than in the past.
I mean, it's exciting what's happening now with women and the point of view in comedy and what's happening and the hard work ethic. I look at somebody like Whitney Cummings, who I managed for probably 7 or 8 years. I mean, this is somebody, no one works harder than Whitney Cummings, or very few people work harder than her. This is somebody who we can visualize in the shower with her phone in a Ziploc bag. Eliza Schlesinger, I mean, incredibly hard work ethic. When she was on Last Comic Standing, I was blown away. It's somebody who technically didn't even have the wealth of material, but was just, her mind was so powerful. It's like, I'm going to do this. And, I love, but also people like Ellen, who, by the way, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I would say Ellen is a genius.
I would say that before her newest special.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen the newest special. But, people always talk about specials, and they have, like, you watch Cat Williams, another guy. God, if he wasn't trying to kill himself so much in how he lives his life, I would put him as a genius. But you watched Cat Williams' last special, and you say, well, it's like he's doing 10 minutes on Jacksonville. And then the last 10 minutes is on his dick. I mean, that's a genius. How could you call that guy a genius? And I always think to myself, hey, what have you written today? It's like, sometimes if a guy does 4 specials in a row, you can't always, Tracy Chapman comes out with the first album.
Yeah, that was her shaking the rust off.
Can't always be the best. Chris Rock did 7 minutes on 10 minutes on Michael Jackson on his, I think his 3rd or 4th special. I remember coming up to him and said, I love what you did tonight. It was amazing, but why did you do that chunk on Michael Jackson? And he says, Barry, because my Michael Jackson jokes are better than anybody else's. And if I want to do Michael Jackson jokes, I'll do fucking Michael Jackson jokes. And I'm proud of it.
I'll give him that.
And so, but I've always had the relationship with artists where, I'm not a yes man. I'm going to come up to them and tell them my opinion, because in my profession, I only get paid for one thing, which is my fucking opinion.
Yeah. People respect your opinion for the most part.
Some do, but look, I'll say like when I was starting to be a manager, I saw a bunch of people in Boston, and my lane was more people that were more lovable and huggable. They could have an edge. Like Jay Moore had an edge, but he still had that lovable asshole kind of quality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Louis C.K. wasn't like a Louis Anderson huggable and lovable, who I managed for a time as well. But he had that kind of aw shucks kind of lovability with the edge. And Joe Rogan was working in Boston, and he was great. He was fucking amazing and powerful and confident and great looking and killed. And not to say if I ever asked him to manage him that he would say yes. Who knows? He'd probably tell me to go fuck myself. You don't know what you're talking about. You and who are you? Or he might, whatever. But the point being is that I recognize when people are doing it, but just like that thing there, I can't manage. You know, it's like there's going to be hundreds and thousands of people who are going to do well without me.
Sure. Yeah, you're not the end all be all. You're not the you can't win them all. I'm sure you've managed people that didn't turn out to have great careers, and I'm sure you've said no to people. You told me a story one time about Kevin Hart.
Yes, I said no to Kevin Hart.
You said no to Kevin Hart. So,
and that was 20 years ago.
And every manager, I'm sure, has a story similar to that. And every comedy club owner has, Mitzi Shore said no to Louis C.K. and to Jerry Seinfeld. Bob Fisher, the owner of the Ice House, told me a story about Jerry Seinfeld came and headlined the room, and he got off the stage, and Bob went, hey, yeah, this club just isn't for you. My audience didn't like it. So I mean, it's impossible.
And it's not that I didn't like Kevin Hart, because obviously I have a great relationship with Kevin Hart, because look up all the podcasts that Kevin Hart has done interviews for, and he said yes to me in 5 minutes. So even 20 years later, I have a great relationship with him. You know why? Because I go up to him every time and I say, look, I was wrong. And I'm so proud of you, of what you've accomplished, and I'm rooting for you. And I truly am. Like, I just didn't think he was ready, and I want him to be patient. He didn't want to be patient. He said,
No one wants to be patient.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
comedian. I've never met a comedian that got offered, JFL or a late night set and was like, I'm going to wait a few years. I'm sure that exists, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, and so, and he went out to L.A., and it happened. Aries Spears the same way. Like, I was just, look, man, you're 16. Just take it easy. Relax. I'm going to L.A.
They were both in Boston?
They were in New York.
New York. So back in the day, you owned the Boston Comedy Club.
Yes, which is the show that you see which is the club you see in Crashing.
The club in Crashing, and I imagine that was your number one way of scouting talent. You would see talent that came through your own comedy club.
Yeah, I would give opportunities to people that the other clubs wouldn't give, and
right.
I wanted to represent young people who nobody wanted to represent.
But now that you are older, are a family man, you have two horrendously spoiled and cute kids.
13 and 14, yes.
I remember the first time I met your kids. I was in your office to record your podcast. Never met them. They didn't know who I was. This is their first time seeing me in their life. They come up to me and start hitting me with pillows. That was no, hey, how are you? Who are you? I'm so-and-so. They just came up to me and started bashing me with pillows, and then I took the pillows out of their hands and beat them back. But
did you throw one of them on the ground or something?
I don't remember what I did. But I started hitting me with the pillow, and they go, my dad's going to fire you. And I go, good. He doesn't pay me shit. No. But, oh, yeah, so you've gotten older. You're a family man. You're chilling on the beach in Malibu. How do you find talent now for your little empire?
The
internet?
I watch so much talent, so many. I mean, I get sent so many things.
Yeah.
And I find myself, unfortunately, passing on 99.99%
You have to.
of things. I just don't like a lot of what people are doing, and I get frustrated. I always tell people, this is what you send me, and for those comedians listening, film every set that you send out to somebody like a late night set, from the hips to the top of your head, straight on, no zooming in and out, and do your set. Boom, 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 boom. Thank you, good night. And don't put stuff in there that's like, hey, what part of the McNugget, is from the chicken? Hey, Gilligan's Island, they could make a bamboo blender, but they couldn't fix a hole in a boat this big. Oh, I was flying and that tray table went down. Hey, listen, I was fucking this girl and it was incredible. Hey, what's your name? What do you do for a living? It's like, fucking just do the set and do material that is not dick jokes and fucking and farting and menstruation and sperm and smoking a
Don't
joint.
be a hack,
and
is what he's saying.
I saw this commercial. Watch fucking Bill Hicks and Jim Jeffries and then create something that no one has done before. Create a bit of how when you see somebody do it, you're like, holy. Watch Gary Gulman do fucking 20 minutes on fruit. And you're like, holy fuck, how do you make jokes about grapefruit? It's like, watch the greats, study greatness, imitate greatness, become fucking great. Don't send me, some guy sends me a tape the other day, like he's so excited, sends me this thing. The applause is there, he's right in front of the mic. I'm thinking, okay, this is great. Then all of a sudden it cuts to a shot from the side. So now I'm watching a shot from the side.
That's a 2-camera shoot.
It's a 2-camera shoot, but then it
There you
stays
go.
with the shot from the side. And then it's like the first thing is, hey, everybody, how you doing? Good? Yeah, me too. Me too. Hey, what's your name? Hey, pal, nice flannel shirt. You feeling good? Shoes? You wear flip-flops to the show a lot? After 1 minute, I shut it off. I fucking call this guy. I'm like, what are you doing? You've been doing this for 18 fucking years and you don't know how to send a tape to somebody? And so a lot of people have stuff on YouTube and these sets on YouTube, but they're like, well, I don't want to take it down because it's got 767 views and I don't want to lose those because cumulated, I'll make like $6 and a bucket of chicken if I just have it this way. I'm like, what? So I find that it's unbelievable to me that
You're
people
picky.
don't understand the business and don't understand that, look, you talk about dating on your show, okay?
I talk about everything.
Yeah, but you talk about women a lot.
Yeah.
And you love women.
Sure.
And when you meet women, like when you met that Australian tourist,
Yes.
okay? You don't roll up to the Australian tourist picking your ass and pulling the underwear out of your shorts and,
No, I try not to do
going
that.
like this and
Not anymore.
you go and you give the best representation of yourself because you don't know how much fucking time
I stopped
you're going
in the
to have with
bathroom.
that Australian tourist.
After the 17-hour flight to Australia, and she was picking me up from the airport, I went to the bathroom and I gave myself, this isn't a politically correct term, but I don't know what else to call it, a Mexican shower, where you use the sink as the shower and you wash up in the bathroom because I wanted to look good.
So why did you do that? I know I'm getting adamant about this, but you did that.
Because I want to look good. I mean, no.
You wanted to be the
you
best
remind-
representation of yourself, and you wanted her to like you. You wanted her to be attracted to you, and you wanted her to eventually give you what you wanted, which was passion.
Obviously, what you're saying is true, and when you say it, it's so obvious. But coming from a comedian like myself, for example, I remember when I'm 6 months into comedy, because every comedian thinks they're better than they are. Everyone. And probably every manager thinks they're a better manager than they are. Same thing. Everyone likes to think highly of themselves for the most part. So I'm 6 months into comedy, and I could kill for 5 minutes. That's just the way it was. I could do well for 5 minutes. Were any of the jokes great? No, they were all terrible. But in my head, I'm like, they're great because I'm killing for 5 minutes. So I think I'm ready.
Ari,
so
you don't know what killing is at 6 months.
No, I know.
If you watch concert films of people,
no.
That's
Let me just tell the story. So I'm doing well for 6 months. I know when I bomb. I know when I don't do well. And I'm not saying I was a good comedian because I wasn't. I for sure wasn't. But I had a set that could do well. That I could go in front of an audience, do it, and everyone in that audience would go, "That guy's funny." So in my head, because of that, and this goes for I'm speaking for a lot of comedians. We think, "Oh, we're good. We're good to go. We have 5 minutes. We could do it." So in that time, there was a YouTube channel called Comedy Time, and they saw me do my 5 minutes and do well, and they said, "Hey, do you want to do it for Comedy Time?" And even though I should have been like, absolutely not, I shouldn't do this, in my head, as a young comedian who's doing well, I go, of course, yeah, let's do it. Put it on the internet, get known, get a following, let's do it. So then I do it, and now there's this 5 minute set of me on YouTube where 2 years later I'm ashamed of and don't want it out there, but then it's on someone's YouTube and they won't take it down.
I've had a number of those taken down, but that's what a manager has to do.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out how to take them down. But you should never put anything up that's not extraordinary. And
what I'm saying is, I agree, and you're right.
If you think it's extraordinary, then have a bunch of people look at it that you trust that will tell you it's extraordinary or not. And, you've sent me a lot of video, and I'm very particular, and I presume you send it to me because you want my opinion.
Sure.
And I have a very strong opinion of some of the things that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's hard for you to accept because you'll be watching a Netflix special and you'll be like, well, how come that guy has an hour and he probably got paid $750,000 and he's doing that same edgy dick humor there that I'm doing? I'm like, and I always say, you're not him. That guy paid his fucking dues to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
You're not there yet. You have to prove to people what you're doing, and then you can get to that. And you got to choose your lane. Yeah, if you want to be fucking Dice Clay, who's amazing and a tremendous actor, he chose his lane. That's it. That's what I do. You're not going to get fluff from me. I'm going to give you the hardcore stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be nasty. I'm going to be Chris Sale, and I'm going to give it to you that way, and you're not going to be able to do anything with it. But that was his lane. That's not your lane. You were doing one joke about this that could be on Fallon, and the next joke was about, a dick joke.
Right.
Then the next joke was something you could see on Kimmel, and the next joke was something, about some drug or something. Or it's just... Sure. And so I think, people can study. Look, when I was starting doing comedy, which probably the audience doesn't know, I used to be I don't even know if you could call me a comic. Forget it. Don't call me a comic. But I did comedy for many years and worked with a lot of great people. And the thing is that when you do it back then, it's hard to believe that, but before 2000, there's nothing. There's nothing. You have The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and there's nothing. There's no internet. There's not. It's like I was watching VHS tapes of William Morris reels to try to understand what comedy was like. But everybody out there watching this, you can study all day long the greatest comedians in the world. You can transcribe it with a transcription app. And then you can look at where the laughs are, where the setup is, where the joke is, where the laugh is, where the next setup, where the next... You can look at how many jokes per minute there are. It's all there. And then when somebody sends me, and I get so many things sent to me that are just, I'm just stunned. It almost is disturbing, because I think to myself, these people have all the tools. And, one of the things that's important to understand is patterns. And you talked about how comedians always think they're better than they are, or people always think they're better than they are. But life is about patterns in every way. And so your pattern as a stand-up comic right now is you haven't done a television show yet.
Mm-hmm.
As a stand-up. So your pattern is, I'm working in the clubs, I'm doing my thing, but 1 year goes into the next year, another year goes into the next year, another month goes into the next month, and then you see somebody who started with you who got a television set on.
Yeah, it's
something.
happened several times.
And you think to yourself, oh, what the fuck, man? I blew that guy off the stage the other night at Ha Ha's Chuckle Hut. But the fact is that your opinion of yourself sometimes means nothing, because you can't see in the mirror what other people see.
Right.
And the world and the audience doesn't lie. And it's the pattern. So for me as a manager, when I was starting, I was identifying teenagers, Chappelle, CK, Burr, Tracy Morgan, Jim Brewer, Jeff Ross, Nick Swartzen, Dane Cook. And these people also had never done a television set in their lives. And I saw them and I thought to myself, I think there's something here, not just in stand-up, but in acting, comedy, acting, drama, TV, film, hosting, writing books, radio, sketch, everything. And those were the people that I identified with. And then I, with my talent, worked tirelessly to get them the opportunities to be seen by as many people as possible, and to work on those sets over and over again for television, repetition, over and over again, the right thing, going to Robert Morton, who did Letterman, having him look at it. Well, I like this joke, and this joke. I don't like this joke. Show me another set. And just repetition. Tracy Morgan, Saturday Night Live, taking him in a room for 8 hours each day. Repetition. Let's go over the test again and again. Come on, B. Again. Come on, man. That was again. And so for me as a manager,
Almost like a coach.
it's one thing. I know this. Sometimes I don't know if I should say this here with you, but so in any profession, you do one thing and it happens lucky. It happens a second time. That's a coincidence. Third time, it's a fucking fluke. But if you're a manager and 20 times you work with artists who don't have a credit, their resume is a blank page, and they become household names and millionaires, then you have to sit down and say, I think there's something that's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that I'm doing with my skill set integrated with their talent and their skill set that works. And so I know my place. I know what I can do. But that doesn't mean there's not 100 other managers or agents or 1,000 or whatever who know their place too. I just am in my one niche, and when I work with somebody, if they follow the formula and the blueprint I give them, and they don't complicate winning, and they don't get drunk and fucked up. They're not an asshole to people, and they just keep doing the right thing, I can get anyone where they want to go if I choose to with their talent and mine. But if somebody's fucking up, they're, yes, there's geniuses who are high every day, and there's geniuses that are alcoholics. I'm just talking about me and my process. I don't know what other managers, the people that managed Farley, obviously they got him to where he needed to go, and he was a genius, but he was also an addict. And I don't think I'm good with that. Like, I don't think I work well with that.
Yeah, it makes it harder to do. Gets in the way of you doing your job.
And so for you and every artist listening, it's the patterns. If you're a lawyer, you win one case and you never win another case again, you should maybe reevaluate what you're doing. But if you're a guy who keeps winning case after case after case, then the formula you're doing is working. And keep the formula going. And so that doesn't mean that there's artists who don't work 10 years and don't get a television set and then get one. There's no formula. Everything has happened. There's always going to be somebody in your profession that gets there first, and there's always going to be somebody who gets there last, and always going to be somebody who never gets there, and you run into them and they're driving an Uber. And you just got to stay the course and know that you can do it, but you got to eliminate the things that are not the formula to success. And like you started this podcast, it's exciting that you started it. Yes, every time a steel mill closes, there's 5,000 new podcasters. But the fact is that you're doing something different. My youngest son, he said, "Can I order a sweatshirt?" I said, "Sure, here's my credit card," because apparently I spoil him. and we were about to go on a trip to Colorado. And he's an athlete, but lately he's been kind of doubting himself, even though he won the home run derby at the Cal Ripken tournament.
Oh, that's awesome.
In August.
I didn't know that. That's great.
Hit 7 out of 8 home runs in a row.
Wow.
But never did that before. Never hit 2 home runs in a game. Never hit 2 home runs in a row in practice.
Wow.
But did it then. And hit 3 ground balls the first 3. And if you know anything about home run derby, it's 60 seconds. So he's basically, that would be like a comedian doing 3 jokes in a row that are bombing. And then you come back and you crush and get a standing ovation. That never happens. I'm so proud of him. But then he's sort of doubting himself the last 5 months. Am I going to be where I'm supposed to be at the beginning of next year? Because the mind is powerful. The mind, you have the positive and the negative. And you think to yourself the little things you say, like when you say, "Hey, I'm doing this podcast, I don't know what's going to happen with it, but, I'm going to start it." That's the negative. Yeah. Instead of saying, "Hey, I'm starting this podcast. I'm really excited about where it's going to go." If you can think about all the times that you've said stuff and your audience has said stuff, you can't believe it. But my other son, Zion, has had feelings of doubt his whole life. But he started producing music. I got him this FL Studio program.
Times are changing in the Katz house.
Yes. And
kids are growing up.
He's starting writing these beats, and it's incredible what he's doing, sending them to rappers, DMing rappers and hip-hop artists, and they're answering, and they're working with. It's like crazy. He's 14. But anyway, so I go to Colorado. I say something stupid as a dad. This all has a point to you guys, I hope. I said something like, he didn't do what I want him to. I said, you take the same detail with that in your professional life, and you'll be mowing the lawns in Malibu when you're 28 years old. And he stood up right face to face with me, and he's not a confrontational kid. And he looks at me and he says, "Dad, I know what I want to do. I'm going to make more fucking money than you can ever imagine, and I'm going to be so successful. You'll never have to pay a bill again. So don't tell me that because I didn't do that, I'm not going to be successful because I am going to be successful.
Wow.
You know, ordinarily a father would give him a backhand or they'd be upset. And I hugged him and I was like, that's the greatest thing you could ever say to me, that you know what you want to do, you know the right thing to do, and you know you're going to be successful and have no doubts. And that was great. So we come home from the trip. The package is on the front stoop. My other son takes it in the room. He comes out with the sweatshirt on, and he says, "How do you like this, Dad?" And on the sweatshirt, it said, "Seek discomfort," which is a slogan by this group called the Yes Theory, which you should check it out. They're an amazing group of guys on YouTube. But think about that, seek discomfort. And the reason why I'm here, and the reason why am proud of you and not to embarrass you, is because when you started this is discomfort.
Yeah.
We're in his garage, okay? He put this up. He built this studio. He probably spent $3,000 of his own money. He took a risk. It's uncomfortable. You start with 0 listeners, 0 people watching, nothing. But you did it, and you went forward, and you made it happen. And so many people don't do that extra thing that makes them uncomfortable. I did my podcast industry standard in my 50s. Everybody told me don't do it. It was uncomfortable starting. Would I fail? Would it be horrible? I've never done this before, but I did it. And I'm proud that I did it. I'm grateful that I did it. And I wouldn't be sitting here with you right now if I hadn't done it.
That's true. There's 2 segments left on this show. So for this segment, I would like to help you in your life, because even though you've helped so many people comedically through your podcast, through being a father, everyone's got problems. You got problems. You've been through a divorce. You've been through loss.
Yeah.
You've been fired from people.
Yeah.
What's going on in your life? What's keeping you up at night? What's something I could give you advice on? Because I'm an expert in everything.
Well, I truly believe that anybody's opinion is valuable who sees you in a way that you can't see yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you've known me
Several years. What I hope you're not mad at that I would like you to do is you've observed the way I work. Mm-hmm.
You observe the way I work on the phone. You observe the way I work in meetings. You observe the way I work on the podcast, how I talk to people. You observe the results that have happened for clients. You observed me pitching television shows that have gotten sold.
Yeah.
And movies as well. But you've also observed some things that don't go well. So what I'd rather you do than me pick something, I would rather you, and I've actually, and you know this for a fact, and maybe it's unusual, but I've actually sat down and had you and asked you this as well, because I always ask everybody that works with me, what do you see that's working? And what do you see that's not working? And maybe I don't see it. It might be something from organizing the office a certain way, or it might be something to the way I utilize my time. But I would actually like to throw it on you, because you were there you were in the sausage factory.
Okay.
So you tell me what are the things that you feel are going
your business.
are going right, and the things that don't go right.
Okay, I could critique your business for you. So first off, before we get into the critique, I think you've had an amazing career, continue to have an amazing career. You have a great podcast. I think you do a great job. But no one's perfect, right? So take whatever I say with a grain of salt.
I'm here. I love it.
Okay.
You can't hurt me, brother. It's all good.
Oh, I won't. I'll try not to. So this is my critique after sitting in the Barry Katz office for many hours. Probably spend more time with you than most of your clients did, if I were to guess. Through us editing that film, the podcast, me, I would say I'd spent more time with you than most of your clients.
And why don't you tell them what film you edited?
We edited a film about the JFK assassination.
Yes, and you did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Under, I think this should be I'm sorry you're giving me a critique, but this was a film that had to be delivered by a certain time.
Yeah, we stayed up till 3 a.m. together a few times.
And first of all, you talk about, when a lot of times I talk about turning no's into yeses. I tried everything to sell this film, and I failed so many times. I'm actually getting emotional because I don't think I've ever received more no's. Presidents of CNN calling me and saying, "I love this." Oh, great. Let's make a deal. I can't put this on the air. And finally found somebody to do it, and the deadline was and I really doubted myself more than any time in my life that I could deliver. And I swear to you, and I know people say this as a thing just to say, but I never could have done it without you. I mean, I would have failed completely. So I think your audience should know how talented you are in that area. So keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay. So thank you. So my critique for your business: you do a great job. You've sold a lot of things. You've made a lot of stars. But my critique is to spend money to make money. I think you're a little frugal with certain things. So I would say, for example, with the podcast, I remember saying, "Hey, this is going great. Your podcast is doing great. Let's buy this nice recorder. Let's get you the best recorder." And you're like, "Well, can we get a cheaper recorder?" You're always penny pinching with those kind of things. Maybe that's my biggest critique, is you're a cheapskate. No, it's you always look to budget, which is smart. You're an adult. You value the United States dollar, but I think you want to be the best. You get yourself an editing bay in your office. You get yourself the nicest podcast equipment you can get. If you want to be the best, you have to have the best equipment, best stuff.
Do you want me to comment on that?
If you want, yeah.
I think that comes from my upbringing, and I'll explain. Because there's a kind of like a catch-22 to the way I've operated in my life. So your audience doesn't know this, but the office that I was in when you were there was this office that shouldn't even have been for one person. It was like a New York studio apartment.
A beautiful office that overlooked Los Angeles.
Yeah, the downtown and the ocean and everything. It had a kitchen that had a Murphy bed in the kitchen. It had this huge couch. It had an area for assistants. And
had a grass green rug.
Yeah,
but it was nice.
And what I tend to do sometimes is I tend to put the money into the perception of what, that building, where 10100 building, which is I think it won the award for best office building in Los Angeles 3 out of 5 years. Loeb and Loeb was there, the Discovery Networks, Hayan Saban, one of the wealthiest men in the world who's into so many different businesses.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so
Power Rangers.
So the perception being that when people walk in the office building, nice. When we walk in the office, nice. And that kind of office costs more money than you can ever imagine.
Right.
And so I sometimes look at the other things and say, okay, can we get this great stuff that we need, but how do we get it for a certain price? And I'll tell you where it goes back to my upbringing, which was My mom used to take me to the flea markets. Before she went, she would dress up to the nines, beautiful dress, hair coiffed, nails done. She'd have a car that she probably couldn't afford, but it was nice, and drive down there. And she'd walk around, and there'd be people who were, in rough shape selling their wares. But she'd always be, picking up something like, hey, this says $10. Can you do any better on this one? And I would see her negotiate for the same nice item that was a certain price and get it for less. And so when I first came to LA, I had an intern who turned out to be a manager and a producer, Wayne Rada, who managed Patrice O'Neill for a while, and Big J. Ogerson after he left as an intern. And I said, I want to do an experiment with you. He said, I'm open to anything. I want to learn. I think this will be a great learning experience. What do you want me to do? I said, I saw that little BMW car that they just came out with, a 2-seater. And I'd like a black BMW, new. I'd like black interior, leather. I'd like a black convertible roof. And I want you to go to 10 BMW dealerships within a 30-mile radius. And I want you to tell them that you're going to put $5,000 down, and you want to lease it for 3 years, and you want to know what the payments are going to be. And I said, that's your experiment. And then when you're done doing it, I want you to call me and tell me which one to go to and pick up my new car, which is going to be the lowest priced one. And so he did his research, went to 10 places. So this is the exact same item. It's not a used item. It's a brand new item, 10 times. And the highest price he got per month was $631 a month lease for 3 years with that deal. The lowest price he found was in Orange County, $298
Pretty big difference
a month. And that's where I went, and he was waiting there for me with the car and the keys, and all I had to do was sign, and I picked up my car. And because of a little extra diligence on his part for the same item, what's that? 333 times 36. Can we do that real quick?
Well, yeah, we can. But the point is, you got about half off of what you would have paid if you just went with the first guy.
So 336 times 36 months. That's $12,096 Wayne Rada saved me with the same exact car.
Yeah.
So what I tend to try to do with people who are young people working in the office, I say, look, one day you're going to do your own movie. Okay, so let's say you do your next short film.
Mm-hmm.
No, let's say you write a feature and you're producing it and you have to make it happen. Well, how do you do it? I just met with a director who did this movie. I don't want to sell him out on this or not. He did this amazing movie, and he got the house location for free as a favor. He got a Lamborghini, a Bentley, and I forget the name of the car, DeLorean for free for his movie. He got locations on the street for free because he took a guy out to dinner. And he showed me where he ended up saving over $175,000 on a $500,000 film. same Lamborghini that you're going to rent per day for $1,500. Same house you're going to rent for $13,000 a day. So when I'm working with people like yourself, when I do that, I know it comes across cheap.
Well,
And
no, I said cheap as a joke. I know you're... Yeah.
But I'm not defending myself because I'm telling you that part of my brain is going to where I was brought up, where I am trying to save money.
Right.
And part of my brain is like, this will help this person in business because right now they're looking at podcast equipment that's in the hundreds of dollars. Maybe 10 years from now, they're going to be producing a film that's $13 million. And if they do the same kind of process with that, they might get it down to $9 million.
Yeah.
But you're right. That's what I do.
That is what you do. And sometimes it's good, but maybe not all the time.
I would
That's all
agree
I'm
with
saying.
that.
And then the other thing I would say to do is, I don't see you out on the scene enough. I know you're a busy man, but hit the clubs. I want to see you at potluck at the Comedy Store. I want to see you scouting new talent. I want to see you getting to know all the comics. I bet you I could name 10 comedians you've never heard of that you should know.
That's quite possible, but I do go to the Comedy Store.
You go,
an average of once every 2 weeks.
I would say it's at once a month. I would say it's once a month. I would say it's once a month to once every 2 months.
Just because I don't see you there, or you hear?
I know when you're there.
How do you know?
People talk, Barry. People know who you are. You're famous. Barry Katz was here last night. It's known.
Okay,
he was there with a hot date.
That's another podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the last segment of the show.
How many last segments do you have?
No,
here?
I said there were two more. That was the second to last. This is the last segment. The last segment of the show is we take some calls, and you're going to give them a little bit of advice, or we are, to one or two calls.
We take calls.
Yeah. They're not live calls. They're pre-recorded messages.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to give them advice on their life. We're going to try and help them out.
All right, buddy.
So,
we both do it, or?
Yeah. So this is from Claire Frederickson.
Where's Claire from?
I don't know.
Okay.
My ex-boyfriend and I broke up about 2 years ago, and I thought that was the right decision. I tried to move on. I've tried to date other people, and I just keep coming back to him. The reason we broke up is because I kept having doubts about everything, so it felt like it wasn't the right thing to be together. But if it's been 2 years and I still think about him every day, does it just mean that I didn't try hard enough? Or I just don't know what to do.
All right. I think we've all been there. I say drop them. There's plenty of fish out there. If you're even thinking, if you're questioning whether or not you should be with this person, get rid of them. On to the next. There's two young single men right here. No, just kidding. But
one young, one close to death.
That's what I say. It's hard. It's hard to break up with someone, always. And I'm sure you do love him. I'm sure you have a lot of great memories together. But you're thinking about it enough to where it wasn't meant to be. That's what I think. What do you think?
There's two philosophies of this. Number one, doubt is the greatest dream killer in the world. Any artist listening, anybody has a dream, you have a doubt, that's bordering on the negative. That's like walking through life with ankle weights. So on one side of the coin, if you have doubt, and that's what ended the relationship, then that's the dream killer. Your doubt ended the relationship. He didn't end the relationship, your doubt. You didn't mention anything in the phone call about any qualities of his that led you to break up with him. You just mentioned your doubt, your mind that turned you against the relationship to let you think that the grass was greener somewhere else. In this day and age, with women the way they are with men and what's happening out there today, the fact that you were actually in a relationship that was lasting is a fucking miracle. And
True.
so I would say that if the person did want to give it another try, what's the worst thing that can happen?
It's true.
It ends again.
Yeah.
So, but that's one side.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are great arguments, and you never know. I could be squashing the love of your life if you take my advice, you might miss out on the man that you were supposed to be with for the rest of your entire life.
There's never, like when you think about doing something, anything, what's the negative consequence? I mean, obviously, if the person's an axe murderer, then you're putting your life at risk. I'm not talking about that. But the worst thing that can happen is you spend more time realizing that it wasn't what it was supposed to be. But fate is a strange thing, and fate will always take you where you want to go. Most people listening who meet their significant other has to do with fate. If they drop their keys from their pocket and pick them up and walk to a certain point, they might have missed that person and not be with them.
It's true. But there's plenty of fish out there. There's not one soulmate, I don't think. You know, fate is if you miss that guy, if you miss that person, you'll meet someone else, I think. And you've proven that.
I mean,
you've had 2 soulmates so far.
Look, again, fate. I don't mean to depress your audience. I was married when I was very young. My wife passed away. She was 23 years old. I thought, it's over. Like, why did this happen? How could this ever happen? And then 15 years later, you're looking into the eyes of your children and you realize, holy shit, the universe had to have this person die for this new life to happen. It's unbelievable.
That's true. That's fair. Okay, let's take one more call. Those are very sweet sentiments. You're a sweetheart.
So I was wondering this for a while now. And I was hoping there was something I could do.
Sounds like a black guy. Let's continue.
About it.
Jesus Christ.
My question is, my mom and my dad are getting a divorce.
I'm just saying, if you were to guess the color of his skin. Black guy, right?
I don't guess.
All right.
I don't want to get in between it, but I already am. So I just want to know if there's anything that I can do in my power to stop that from happening.
Listen to it one more time.
So I was wondering this for a while now. And I was hoping there was something I could do about it. My question is, my mom and my dad are getting a divorce. I don't want to get in between it, but I already am. So I just want to know if there's anything that I can do in my power to stop that from happening.
First off, guy sounds a little old to care. No, I take it back. I don't know. I don't think there's anything he can do. That's what I think. It's it's sad when your parents are going through that and you want to fix it but you can't. But it's between them. It's a relationship between them, and it sounds like it's over, and it sounds like it's for the best that it's over. Both my answers are very negative. What do you think? Is there anything he can do to stop his parents from getting divorced?
My answer to that is you never know unless you try. And if you don't, if you don't get off the dock, you're not going to get to your destination. So, but when you get off the dock, you still could get a wave knock you back and take you back to shore. I don't mean to use these stupid analogies, but the fact is that there's no reason ever not to try to create a situation that you feel might be helpful to both parties and your family. And again, going back to what I said before, what's the worst thing that can happen if you try and you try to figure out solutions and you try to help them? The worst thing that happens is they get a divorce, which is the same thing that's happening.
True. Maybe you make them go to couples therapy.
So
family therapy together.
I always like to stay the positive course, which, you know, it doesn't never hurts to get out there. You did this podcast. It could fail, but you did it. You went out there. You took the steps. You walked forward, and you did it. And for this guy and the woman before this, what's the worst thing that can happen? The same exact thing that's happening.
That's true. That's true. But what if my theory is sometimes trying a second time, it just causes so much more heartache and pain. You know, it's like tearing the wound back open. They've accepted the divorce. They want to move on and heal. And you're saying, let's dig deeper.
And, you know, sometimes what happens is they get back together and they live happily ever after for the rest of their life. But you went to the dark side.
You're right. You're right. I think that's a good lesson to take away from this podcast. Be positive. Be happy. Follow the blueprint. Go after what you want. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for coming to my garage.
It's an honor to be here. I started my career in podcasting in Jay Moore's garage, and it's only fitting that I end it here in your garage.
End it. Your podcast career is just beginning.
Thanks, man.
All
Thanks
right.
for being so supportive.
Thanks. See ya.